Welcome back to The Director's Cut, a podcast brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, featuring today's top directors sharing behind-the-scenes stories of their latest films and insights into the craft of directing. Please take a second to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. In this episode, Leigh Whannell takes us behind the scenes of his new horror mystery, The Invisible Man. A modern update to the classic sci-fi thriller, the film tells the story of Cecilia, who begins to suspect that the suicide of her abusive ex, a wealthy and brilliant scientist, was a hoax. As a series of eerie coincidences begin to threaten the lives of those she loves, Cecilia must convince others that she is being hunted by someone nobody can see. In addition to The Invisible Man, Mr. Whannell's credits include the feature films Upgrade and Insidious Chapter 3. After a recent screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Mr. Whannell spoke with director David F. Sandberg about filming The Invisible Man. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Welcome, Leigh.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
You've made an awesome movie. I love this movie, and I've seen so much love for it, like online as well, from like fellow filmmakers and critics, and like everyone loves the movie. It's awesome. Already when the movie started, I was like, "This is a masterful opening," because yes. I mean, it's so many other movies, it feels like they would start so much earlier. Like you'd show the relationship and like, oh, he's so bad, and to her, and you'd see like him working in the lab with like, I'm this close to finding a cure for visibility. Don't pull my funding. And like, but you started with her getting away, and with her, like, we get how bad he is, with how afraid she is.
Right. We did get that note in test screenings, the whole you read those sheets. It's hard to discern how many people in this room have actually been through that. But, you get, the sheets and the handwriting. And it's, there was a lot, like once it gets past 10, once it gets into double figures, it's a thing. Like, yeah, we're going to have to dress the guy with the hook hand or whatever. There was more than 10 saying like, well, we didn't know enough about it. That's my impersonation of your average person. We didn't know enough about it. Like, can't we see a scene? They all seem to be wanting that 5-minute scene at the start where the guy was like, you call these shirts clean? And, she's like, and then you see her escape. It would just made the film so lame. Like, I think, like, there's nothing I could write that would be scary. I think Elizabeth Moss is a good enough actress to communicate how scary the guy is. But before this, when I found out that this Q&A was starting at 9 p.m, I was like, well, we just opened this weekend. This is a good chance for me and a few of the crew members to go to El Compadre down the road. So I'm not going to lie. I've had more than several margaritas.
How do you feel about test screenings? Because I had that same issue.
How do I feel about margaritas? Sorry.
Yes.
By the way, the flaming margaritas, it's totally it's not even, like, they don't need to light it on fire, but you have to do it. Sorry, go again. Sorry, I'm listening this time.
Do you find value in the test screenings? Because I've had the same problem with, like, on Lights Out, where people in test screenings were like, oh, we want to find out more about the background. And you're like, okay, we'll put that in. And then people online are like, it's not scary because we find out too much.
You can't win. It reminds me of that episode of The Simpsons where Homer discovered that his uncle or something ran a car company, and the guy was voiced by Danny DeVito, and he's like, you're the average person I'm designing cars for. You should design my next car. And then it was just awful. Like, you realize when you I don't know that people know what they want. I think if you ask people a direct question, they'll answer it. If you say to people, think of something you didn't like about this film, they'll be like, I guess the guy's shirt was offensive. Like, they'll think of something. So you have to be good at discerning which are the notes that are worthy of paying attention to. Like, everybody does. 249 out of 300 people didn't understand the ending. We have a problem. as opposed to like, 30 people didn't like, her clothes or whatever. You need to, as you say, you need to become good at discerning the actual notes from the notes that you can be free to ignore, type of thing.
I love the way you do action. I mean, with Upgrade and now this, you do a lot of really cool stuff with the camera, with like the camera going down with people and spinning around and coming back. Is that a lot of like certain rigs, or is it a lot of post effects, or like what's the magic trick?
On Upgrade, it was very low budget. We didn't have any money, so we did the sort of bare bones version of it. It was like it was a weird. Upgrade was an interesting film because we shot it in Australia, and the film was written as the first draft of Upgrade was very expensive. I just wrote the version that I would want to see James Cameron do, and then Jason Blum, and then I decided I wanted to direct it, and Jason Blum was like, well, it's going to need to cost $5 million US. And so I had to sort of razor cut this script down to a $5 million movie. So by the time I got to Australia, I was just testing the limits of what we could do. But I kind of, I guess I didn't know better, and I still would say things to the stunt team like, I want this to look like no fight scene that anyone's ever seen before. Yeah. I would actually say those actual words. And
they must love that.
Yeah, and our stunt coordinator, Chris Sanders, was this crazy guy. He worked on the original Mad Max movie when there weren't stunt people in Australia. That was just George Miller telling the nearest kid to get on a motorbike and ride it into a wall as fast as he could. And when you ask Chris about it, he's missing a leg from a stunt gone wrong. And he's like, it was fucking mad, mate. It was great. Like it's that you can really take advantage of that Aussie, like, let's just learn to swim by diving off Niagara Falls attitude. So I was like, hey guys, I want this to look like no fight scene I've ever seen. And instead of being like, well, you're going to need several months and we're going to need some top choreographers to come in and train us and it's going to cost this much. Instead of saying that, Chris would be like, oh yeah, fucking A, let's do it. Like, he was amazing, and they were all just up for it. And we did the low-budget version where we just strapped an iPhone to Logan, the actor, and the camera locks to the phone. So wherever Logan goes, the camera goes. With this one, it was a little more, Rodeo Drive. It was like we had a motion control camera, so same sort of effect of the camera going down to the floor with the actors, but we were using
one of those robotic arms?
Yeah, it was a robotic arm that would just go with the actors. And so it was the same spirit, but a little bit fancier equipment.
Yeah. There's two sort of action scenes in this that seemingly don't have any cuts. It's like the kitchen fight that's like over a minute long, and my favorite is like in the hospital when he's killing all the guards, and it's like all the way from that to her running down, chasing him down the stairwell, like shooting after him and then running out. It's seemingly no cuts. Why make
many cuts?
A lot of hidden cuts, like in the whip pants and little...
Yeah, in the pants, and like every time she goes through a doorway, we're in a different location. It's just about hiding those cuts and just figuring out how we could do it. I have this tendency to, make life difficult for myself, as I'm sure, many directors do. I guess you realize that you're not the person that makes life difficult. You're just... Like, I'm sure there was somebody on the set of Goodfellas being like, do we really need to follow them all the way through the kitchen? Couldn't we just cut? Like, it was up to one guy to be like, no, we cannot. And then you just keep pushing against logic. I mean, that's the interesting and the frustrating thing about making films is the artistry versus the financial. Like, there's always somebody telling you to do this shit thing. Like... I need 200 horsemen on that hill. It's like, what if it was 4 horsemen and they were ponies and they weren't on the hill, they were down at our level? And it's completely up to you to be like, oh, okay. If you say, oh, yeah, that, like, the best piece of advice I got about directing, before I directed my first film, it was the third Insidious movie. So like I was aware that no one in the world was looking at this movie as Long Day's Journey into night, but I was, because it was like my first time directing. So to me, it was Citizen Kane, and I remember asking a bunch of writer directors that I know for advice, and John August, the writer, very nice guy, said, don't make the mistake of thinking you're hosting a party.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to make everyone happy. You don't have to abuse people. You don't have to deliberately oppress people and make them unhappy. But it also doesn't matter that much if someone doesn't like you for a day, and it was so stuck with me, because somebody's always saying like, what if it wasn't 100 horsemen? What if it was just 4? And it was, they're gonna bring it back to what's best for them. And it's up to you to go, in those moments, it's up to you to go, no, it must be 100.
Yeah.
And you figure it out. And you also have to know when to hold them and fold them. Like, there are other moments when you're like, okay, fine. But if you know it must be 100 horsemen, you have to be willing to be unlikable for a few days, because no one remembers that stuff at the premiere. Nobody at the premiere of this film was coming up to me being like, you really put me through the ringer on that kitchen scene, Leigh. Like, they were hugging me and being like, wasn't it great? And I'm thinking like, you weren't telling me I was great on that day. You actively hated me. But yeah, I was like, we need to do this kitchen fight in one shot. And many, many people from many departments were like, scene would be a lot easier if we did it with cuts. And I was like, I was the only lunatic that was like, it has to be all one shot. Yeah. And then, so anyway, it's a long-winded answer, but it's like there has to be somebody there committing to the thing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I talked to some people who worked on a movie recently with a director who does a lot of takes, and like there's really long days, but they were talking about it like they love the guy because it's like he's making sure it's great. And like, you know, any crew member would rather point to a movie and go like, yeah, we fucking made that awesome movie, rather than, yeah, that movie was shit, but we went home at 5 p.m., you know.
Do you ever have those moments where you're like, God, should I just do the lesser thing and give up now? Or?
That's all the time. It's a big problem. That's sort of my personality, where I'm kind of like, oh, okay, well, maybe not. Yeah, okay.
Same.
But
I'm Australian, if I see someone who's upset and in pain, I'm like, my go-to position is like, let's make life easier for that person.
Yeah.
And I have to fight against it and be like, nope, they'll be fine. Like, they'll get over it. Yeah. They'll get over it.
Yeah. So for these action sequences, are you a big planner in general, like storyboards, shot lists, all that stuff?
Only on certain scenes.
Yeah.
Not a big storyboarder. I remember meeting up with these friends of mine, the Sandberg brothers, who are directors, Australian sort of genre directors, and they're like, you know, those guys in every high school. There's the people that get the A+ on every test, and they have like books this thick just of reference. They make you feel like you're not really trying. Yeah. You're like, oh God, and I'm not that person, but. When it comes to an action scene, yeah, like on Upgrade and with this, we would shoot the action scenes with a little video or with a phone and shoot it and cut it. But other scenes where it was just drama, I know that many directors, including directors that everyone on the crew would tell me about, subtly, so-and-so knew every shot. There'd be a minute of shame, but then I guess you justify it by, like, when you've got an actor as amazing as Lizzie, as Elizabeth Moss, you don't want to be like, then we're going to cut to a close-up of you here. Like, you just let her do her thing, and she's incredible, and then you just cover it. Like, so for me, I guess the theory is, like, if it's technical and it's action, yeah, do your homework, fine. But if it's emotional stuff, I can do without the homework. Personally, I can be like, let's just see what happens with her.
Yeah. And how do you work with your DP? Are you very much like, I know John Carpenter said, like, I just need someone to light the scene. I know where the camera is and where everything goes, and while other
really, I admire that. Well, Stefan Duccio, who was the DOP of this film, and Upgrade, he and I have a great relationship. Like, when we're not shooting something, we get along great. Like, when we're in the research stage and we're just watching movies, it's basically just an excuse for us. The research, sort of getting to know the movie stage of the thing, is the most fun because you're just watching movies you love and you're geeking out over some shot in some movie. And usually I'm definitely a very passive, turn my brain off viewer of movies. Like, I don't analyze a movie as I watch it at all. Like, it just washes over me. I don't know what happened. It's a coma. It's like I'm in it and it's happening only when I'm making a film and deliberately looking for shots. That's the only time in my life that I ever look at a film from an analytical point of view. Like, and I'll see new things. I'll be like, wow, I see what they're doing here in Seven. I've watched this film 124 times and never once considered where they were cutting, ever. I've never, and I know a lot of people do this as they're watching a movie. They'll be like, nice cut, nice. I don't do that at all. My brain is off. It's gone. It's over there having dinner. So only when I'm preparing to make a film do I watch Seven and only then am I like, oh, wow, look, yeah, he's gone. And then he's cut over here. And so when we do that together, we're like geeking out about it. Then when you get on set and like the sun is setting and the time is running out, things get a little... things get a little hostile, but it's both in service of the movie. He's so passionate and I'm so passionate that it's like, it's all hugs at the end. It's like we're trying to get this thing, but we do a lot of talking. We don't necessarily map everything out, but we do so much talking that by the time we step on set, it's like this unspoken thing that we both have.
What were some of those movies you watched before?
For this movie, I mean, when I was writing, I was watching like Misery. Misery is a great one. That's just so functional. Like every scene kind of tightens the screws on the suspense. It was a real range. I mean, there's older films like Cat People, which is it's weird for an older film like that to still have, I feel like a lot of people pretend that these older movies still resonate for them, but really it's just a museum piece. Like, wasn't that great that they invented that crane shot? But It doesn't smash you in the chest.
Because you've since seen it a
well,
million times.
They just had different rhythms back then. Like, someone just had to talk and people in the audience were like, they're talking. Like now to keep a modern teenager awake, 10 robots have to be punching a moon to death. Like it's just a different film language. But every now and again, like 1 out of 1,000 of those movies, there's one that still holds up, and like Cat People still has some shots where you're like, oh, this is so tense. It's like Citizen Kane, where you're like, I could learn, or Hitchcock, where you're like, this still holds up. So I was watching those, and a lot of those sort of late 80s, early 90s adult thrillers that they used to make before CGI came along, like, Fatal Attraction and Single White Female, and these movies that they always had movie stars in them, and they were always about like 2 or 3 people. And I love those movies, So those were the sort of movies I was watching.
Okay. And speaking of CGI, did you have like a real suit at all? Or is that all?
We did
CGI
have a real
guy?
suit. It looked terrible. Like,
So it all replaced?
I mean, I'm hoping. I haven't really had like a meeting yet with other directors and said I'm hoping that it always looks terrible on set. Like, I was like, wow, that is not good. And the studio that made it was incredible. Odd Studios. They're like the best practical effects people in Australia. They did Fury Road and so much stuff, The Matrix. But when you see this rubber suit, you're like, wow, is that gonna be it? To see it with the naked eye, you doubt it a lot. But I just had to have that thing where I was like, this will be good eventually. Like we'll add our thing to it and we'll make it good.
So it's not much of the rubber suit in the movie. It's sort of like...
It's like the rubber suit with our thing added to it.
So, and was there always a guy there? Like, how did you shoot those shots where it's like the fights and, someone's arm gets stopped? Like,
it was a mixture of both. I mean, of everything. Like, there was no one way to do those scenes. We had everything from a guy in a full green bodysuit, like wrestling with Elizabeth, all the way to like a props guy hidden in a cabinet. He's in the movie. You just can't see him because he's in a cabinet pulling a door closed with a piece of string. So it was weird. It was like within one shot you had up-to-date CGI and the other side of the frame you had practical effects that they would have used on the original Invisible Man in 1933. Yeah. Just a string and a door. And all of that was existing within the same frame.
And it works great together.
Like you just, at the end of the day, all that matters is the end result. As long as the audience watching it can't discern the difference between the cutting edge stuff and the practical stuff, then you're good.
Yeah. How did you work with Elizabeth Moss? Like, did you have any time to rehearse before shooting, or was it just sort of? Did she come on board?
Well, no, we did. We didn't rehearse so much. She doesn't love rehearsal. She doesn't want to rehearse. She doesn't even want to rehearse on the set right there. Like she's one of those actors that makes fun of that. When you have to block.
Yeah.
And so you set up the cameras. I like to talk with the actors and then bring the crew in. And she was always like, then I go over here and have a drink. And she would be making fun of the whole thing up until you call action. And then she'd be like, right there. I think that's her thing. That's her whole thing of like, I don't want to live it until you call action.
So it's fresh kind of
thing. But what she did want to do, we did sit together for hours and hours and hours in pre-production. But we didn't rehearse. We just talked. We just talked through the script, and she wouldn't act anything out, but she would talk through every line of dialogue and every beat. And for me, writing a movie that snuck up on me as a movie about a woman experiencing these really sensitive issues, she was the stamp of approval. Like she was the final puzzle piece I needed to make it feel authentic for me, because she would bring this female perspective and very sort of quietly and gently be like, I think I would more do this here, or I'm not sure about this. This is maybe I should be quiet before I'm angry. Or all these little adjustments she made, I realized that it was her giving me her sort of female perspective on how she would feel in this situation, and I just took it on board. So that was our rehearsal, was just talking. Just talking through every scene.
How did the movie come about? Is like something you've been wanting to do for a long time, or was it kind of like it was like Universal, or looking for takes, and I could do this?
Yeah, no, it was. Obviously, I was aware of the Invisible Man as a character, and I'm a big fan of these, old Hollywood monsters. Just as a horror fan, you realize you're a fan of where it began. And so. Up until this movie suddenly landed in my lap, I was like listening to podcasts about old Hollywood movies, but never thinking, I'd love to make a Dracula movie. And then I had finished Upgrade and I went in for a meeting at Universal, and they suggested The Invisible Man to me. They just said the title. They were like, what do you think about The Invisible Man? Which was weird. It'd be like if you were talking to someone and they, out of the blue, they were just like, what do you think about Channing Tatum? Like, apropos of nothing, you'd be like, he's great, I guess. And so I was like, sure, yeah, he's fine, yeah. And obviously it was a total ambush. They had pre-planned this whole thing. I was the only deer sitting in the scope of a hunter's rifle sitting there, and I was like, yeah. And they were like, well, what would you do with this character? And then like 6 people are like, yeah. And I was like, off the top of my head, because there was no pressure. I'd never given 1 second's thought a day in my life to making an Invisible Man movie. Therefore, there was zero pressure. So I was like, well, I mean, if I was making that movie, I would tell the whole story from the point of view of his victim. And they were like, interesting. And then I walked out of there and was like, bzz, bzz. Who's this? Oh, my agent. What's he want? They love your take on the Invisible Man. Oh. I was like, what take? They're like,
what did they love about it?
They are blowing up my phone right now, buddy. You need to get on board and sign this contract. And I was like, okay. And the next thing I knew, I was making this film. But what I instantly saw was an opportunity to really modernize it. I guess the Invisible Man, as opposed to a lot of these other classic monsters, you know, they have all this iconography. Dracula has all these rules, like he can't come out during the day or whatever. And the Wolfman, you know, when the full moon, the Invisible Man, there's no rule. It's just a guy. It's just a guy who's invisible. Like, you can't see him. It could be anybody. Could be a cousin. And I saw an opportunity to be like, not in a sort of like, aha, it's a stroke of genius way, but just in a really, to me, an obvious way to be like, well, what if you were a woman and you broke up with somebody who was obsessive and was stalking you and they had the power of invisibility? Like what, and that was the gateway to me, you know, writing the whole film.
That's awesome. Benjamin Wallfish, my favorite composer, did the score for this. Yeah,
he's a very good composer.
Yeah. How do you work with composers? Did you get to have any of the score while you were cutting it, or was it all temp music, or like what's the process?
It was just temp, yeah. Although when we showed him the movie, we just showed him the film without any score, rather than showing him the temp score. We just played it without any score. And which he actually really appreciated. He told me later.
Yeah, because I guess you get really influenced by by what's in there. I mean, even I know I as a director can go, you know, you fall in love with a piece of temp.
You do. And then that classic thing happens with composers where it's like the unspoken thing is like, can you give us the last track in Inception without getting us sued?
Yeah,
just give us that. And then have to figure out a way to do the Inception score, you know, without getting sued. And so I was like, I don't want to do that to him. I was actually really curious what he would come up with if I didn't have any temp score for him to listen to. So we just sat and watched the film silently, and he was like taking down all these notes, and it was a great experience.
So how did you feel? So how did it feel when you then got to hear stuff where you hadn't?
Well, I did tell him the feeling I wanted.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like I just said, have at it. But we watched the film without any music. And then I said, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I would like it to be. And it was interesting because there was two sides to the score. There was the more sort of electronic, screechy Adrian side. And then there was the emotional Cecilia side. It was like two different scores. So the electronic stuff, he would send me stuff, but the orchestral stuff, I actually went to London. I just happened to be in London doing one pickup shot, one line for this movie. Not like a scene.
Why in London?
Line. Because that's where Oliver was, the guy. He was there, and we had to go to London to do this one shot. And it just so happened that was the same weekend that Ben was recording the score. And so we went to this amazing studio in London, Air Studios, and he had this. Well, I've never done this before. Like, I've been involved with a lot of movies, but they've been fairly low budget movies. Like, you always get like the quartet. It's like, believe me, 6 people can make a hell of a racket. And you're like, yeah, it sounds fine. And it does sound good, but this was my first experience with like 60 people in a room, and they were all like the best people in London. It was one of those things where you can't believe your luck. Like, Ben was like the cellist is the lead cellist for the BBC Symphony Orchestra, and he was just pointing out all these people and geeking out about it. And the building is an old church. It's got these huge high ceilings with this massive old pipe organ where they did the Dunkirk score. And so I'm sitting in this room. Well, I was sitting behind the glass where the mixers are, and Ben was like, come in the room. And then I sit in this room, and everyone is so polite. It's like, have you ever put 60 Brits in a room? It's literally like, oh, how are you? Yes. Yeah, you know, they're all knitting and like, everybody's got tea. Would you like some tea? It's like, is everybody fine? Is everybody comfortable? All right. If everybody's comfortable, then let's begin. Excellent. And I'm sitting in the corner, and then Ben's like, you know, and then 60 of the best players in the world, like, try not to cry. We're just like, I was just like, gah! Like, oh my God. Because when it's happening in front of you, even behind the glass, it wasn't the same. Like sitting near them and the oxygen of 60 of the world's best players just hitting you in the face, and it's your score for your movie, and there's a little sort of shitty screen up in the corner with a time code playing the scenes. It was incredible. It was amazing. And loved it. Forget what the question was, but
it was, you answered it.
It was something about music.
I think our time is up, but
yeah.
Do you know what's next for you? Can you talk?
No, I mean, I'm being honest. Usually I always have some other thing that I've started and I'm like, but this is the first time I'm like, there's nothing, so we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. And
thank you. Thanks
Leigh
for doing
Whannell,
this.
everyone.
Seriously, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
My
brother.
first time moderating.
Thank you for coming out.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. Don't forget, you can find past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.